Good morning. Thank you so much for coming today to celebrate together the extraordinary 88 years of our mother, our popo, big sister, auntie, cousin, neighbor, maybe a landlord in the room, and friend. Nothing would have made our mom happier than a church filled with her family and friends. Not even the 90th birthday party she was already planning at Lunata. This would have brought her so much joy, so thank you for setting aside holiday plans, many of you traveling a great distance at great expense, financially and personally, to be here on the heaviest travel weekend of the year. It means the world to us, and there's great strength and comfort found in the love you've shown in gathering here with us. Simply put, my mom was incredible, and I am inexpressibly grateful and blessed beyond measure to be her daughter. I figured out a while ago that the more I understood my mom, the more pleasing to God my life could be. I was the first person in our family to believe the gospel, the good news of the grace of God, that Jesus Christ has paid the debt for my sin. Mom was the fourth to come to that saving faith, and our shared love for God was the core of our relationship in my adult life. We didn't always agree on everything, I'm sure not as nearly as much as she wanted, but that was okay because our bond was unbreakable, and my love and my respect for her grew as a mother and a fellow believer as I listened and watched and understood her over the years. Much of what I learned and loved about Mom was solidified beyond doubt this last month since she passed away, as I've been camping out at Lunata and going through everything. From the moment I walked into her house, the morning after the accident, everything at Lunata Court, her home of almost 50 years, was a window into understanding and appreciating who she was and what she wanted for her life. Her home was the clearest physical evidence of her life's journey and a reflection of the life lessons imparted to me and to my brothers and to her 11 grandchildren and possibly many of you. The house, its contents, and the way she lived in it showcased my mom's legendary frugality. Saving money meant waging a personal war on waste. Disposable was a bad word. She could find 20 uses for a single sheet of aluminum foil. We dried paper towels to reuse them, and we never, ever threw away a Ziploc bag unless it reached structural failure. Our brown paper lunch bags were to be brought back and forth from school for at least 2 weeks, and then whatever was left of it was used as a dustpan after sweeping the kitchen floor. And electricity? Just forget about it. Growing up, you did not want to be the child who left a room with the light on. She had radar for a kilowatt being wasted on the other end of the house. And heat? We didn't know what a thermostat was until we left for college. Personally, in the winter, I slept with my clothes for the next day under my blanket with me and got dressed each morning under the covers with only my face showing and watching my breath in the cold air. But we understood the assignment. Work hard, save money. But what I realized over the years was the profound, beautiful paradox of my mom's life. This frugality that was born out of scarcity became the ability to be generous. She saved so she could be generous. The drawers in her house were overflowing with every size of rubber band, twist tie, links of string and ribbon. Her cupboards were stacked with empty jars, plastic yogurt and tofu containers, and every last paper or plastic bag that ever came through the door. Why? So that she could send it back out the door, filled with something for others. So she could send you home with leftovers, a bag of persimmons, bolok, oranges, ginkgo nuts, lemongrass, and if you saw her around Christmas, you went home with a bag of hand-packed fortune cookies and a pair of these. Mom's famous booties. There's now a limited amount, so I'm going to need one of the grandchildren to carry on this tradition. For Mom, Lunata started perhaps as something of a showcase, with its remodeled kitchen and an island with a toaster built into the wall. It was so fancy. It was a testament to having made the most of the opportunities that her own parents had afforded her and what hard work could accomplish. But throughout the decades, her home was something much more important than that. It was her mission control center, dedicated to serving, helping, and enjoying others. How many of us in this room have played long hours of tennis, ping pong, bumper pool, mahjong, frisbee football, basketball, and now pickleball at Lunata, attended one of her many parties or celebrations or a youth group meeting, and did the buffet loop around the island for her soy sauce, green onion, lemon pepper salmon, and her 25-cup pot of nau mai fan, or maybe in later years just sat with her at Lunata over a cup of tea at her kitchen table. Yes, as time went by, her house filled with stuff. Some of it she collected or inherited or things that others brought to her. On the surface, it may have appeared as hoarding, but it wasn't. Mom was okay with things in every corner of her home because nothing made her happier than you saying you needed or wanted something and her being able to say, I have that. You have it. You take it. Whether it be some obscure Chinese herb or medicine, a tool or a tennis racket, if you wanted or needed it, she'd pull out a paper bag and a twist tie and you'd go home with it. And if she supported what you were doing and how you were doing it, that money she worked so hard for and saved like precious gold, well, she gave that away freely too. In these most recent years, Mom chose to live in the smallest room in the house, a simple twin bed and a little closet filled with her little clothes. She was surrounded on all sides by years and years of personal Bible study, sermon notes, a million photos stuck in envelopes or on her refrigerator, and her memories. I kid you not, she kept every birthday and Mother's Day card, every Christmas card photo, every note, every letter, because she loved all of us. Not just the stuff from her kids and her grandkids. She kept every invitation to every one of y'all's weddings, banquet dinners, every program from every memorial service. Every flat surface around her was covered with copious handwritten notes on random pieces of paper of the important details from conversations or visits with everyone, the names and ages of your children, their slipper sizes, and whatever was happening in all your lives. One of the hidden blessings of my current work is a long morning commute. 5 days a week, I pulled out of my driveway and said, "Hey Siri, call Popo." And 5 days a week, she was ready for my call. Cup of coffee brewed, hearing aids in, notes in front of her from whoever she had talked to the previous day in her rotations of conversations with all of you. She wanted to share those with me. We talked about everything, and we challenged each other's perspectives. But no matter what, when I finally pulled into the parking lot, we always ended with my saying, "Love you, Mom," and her saying, "Okay, bye-bye." I'm sure she's in heaven now, waiting eagerly to tell me she was right about everything. So thank you, Mom, for the laughter, the lessons, and the endless love. I can't wait to see you again. And don't worry, I promise to turn the lights off, so like you, I'll always have something for others.
All right. Hello. My name is Micah Jung. I'm Derek's 5th child, and I'm Popo's 8th grandchild. If you knew Popo, you knew she loved to talk. 2 things I always kept in mind when having conversations with her was to smile and to nod. Now, it's not because I didn't care, but it was just because she always had a lot to say, and a lot of the times it was just easier to listen. I want to thank everybody for being here today, and though I've only known Popo for around 20% of her life, I'd like to share some of my favorite memories with her. During middle school, I began to work at the hardware store with Popo. I would get dropped off for the afternoon shift, and it would just be me and her. I remember when I first started working there consistently, she asked me to pick a specific department to learn more about at the store. The option I picked was screws, nuts, and bolts, and Because she knew the store like the back of her hand, for the next month, she taught me all she knew about the differences between the screws, all the different screws, nuts, and bolts. Now, while that was fun, sort of, when we weren't analyzing the thread patterns on a specific bolt, Popo taught me about how to identify coins. While the majority of coins were nothing special, some coins were more valuable because they are composed of silver. Together, we would double-check the coins that we would get from customers and the coin rolls that we'd get from the bank. I remember our disappointment when we would get a freshly minted roll of the current year's quarters, completely missing the chance to get a silver quarter. Other times, we would be closely analyzing a coin that has the potential to have an error, and it could be potentially worth hundreds of dollars. Now, though most coins are not silver, and none of the coins we analyzed had the elusive error, it was fun learning from Popo and seeing her excitement every time we got something potentially worth more than 25 cents. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to take on a project car from one of my cousins. It was enticing, but our house is not conducive to working on cars. I knew that Popo's house would be the perfect place to rebuild this car. I remember asking if it would be okay to use her garage to store and work on the car. I told her that it would probably take a long while, though I planned to take it down with me to college. She graciously told me that I could work on it there as long as I wanted to. Now that summer, I went over to work on my car almost 3 times every week, and every time I went over to work on that car, we would get lunch together. We've gotten pho and grapevine multiple times, but the most popular spot for us was Andy's for a sandwich. Papa would always ask for updates about how the car was doing, and she would remind me that she knew how to drive stick shift and that I should let her drive it when it was finished. I told her maybe not, but I would definitely take her for a spin. Unfortunately, I did not end up taking the car to college with me, and after 2 years working on the car, it still does not run great, and so we never got to go for a drive. I will always remember her humor and encouragement about the car. Papa always asked what the process was and how far along I was, just waiting for the day that we could go out and take it together for a spin. Papa not only liked to talk a lot, but she was also interested in learning and sharing what she learned. Through our many lunches, she would update me on what books she was reading. I remember she was reading a book about a group of brothers in New Mexico. Over lunch, she was telling me about their experiences growing up in New Mexico, while I was devouring a bowl of pho. Now, after my first quarter at college, she asked about what I was learning and if she could read some of the books that I had to read. So during winter break, I gave her a book about the Cold War, and when I saw her over spring break, she had already finished the book and was ready to share her opinion on how it felt to live through the Cold War and the differences between her experience and the author's opinion. Now, whether it was about Mexican history or in New Mexico or the Cold War book that I gave her from one of my classes, she was always interested in learning new things and sharing them with us. The most important thing that Popo taught me was to love God. As my siblings will also mention, she came to church with us every single Sunday. I've seen her every Sunday for the past 20 years of my life. Through these years, as become apparent the love that she had for the Lord, she would remind my siblings and I about the importance of reading our Bible and praying every day. I found it encouraging the way that she would tie God into everything, the stories that she would tell about her childhood and about how God has provided for her throughout her life and how he continued to provide for her. Popo, I'm going to miss our conversations that we had as I drove you back home after church, your random calls in the morning while I was still in bed, and our lunches that would sometimes annoy me because it pulled me away from the car. But now I see these moments as blessings from God, moments and memories that I'm grateful for. I'm comforted to know that you are with the Lord right now, and I'm grateful that I got to know you more deeply these past couple years. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Jung, and I am Derek's 3rd child and Popo's 5th grandchild. Popo will always hold a special place in my heart, and today I want to share with you some of the memories that illustrate her caring and thoughtful nature. My first memory of her was when I was 3 years old, and I know that I was that old because it was the night my younger brother Ethan was born. I remember that my parents went to the hospital at night, and Popo was there to stay with me and my siblings. According to my mom, I never woke up at night, but for some reason, that night, I woke up, realized my parents were gone, and felt really scared. I have this memory of Popo being there to comfort and hold me on her lap, telling me that my parents would be back soon and that I didn't need to be scared. Her caring nature would continue to appear time and time again. Sundays, growing up, she would buy snacks for us to enjoy between Sunday school and morning service. Some of my favorite snacks she bought were Milano cookies and chips. She also, in Asian grandma style, would cut up some type of fresh fruit. On Sunday afternoons, we would go over to her house to play in her yard, and I had so many memories of playing there with cousins, siblings, and friends. Popo also tirelessly tended her yard and took great pride in her orange tree, and to this day, they are some of my favorite oranges. The prettiest tree in her yard was the ginkgo tree next to the tennis court. I always admired that tree as it was one of the few trees which leaves change during the seasons. Aside from the vibrant fall colors it boasted, this tree also produced fruit, yet the pungent odor turned me off and I never ate it. Popo, on the other hand, would pick up the little nuts and eat them. Now, living in New York City, there are so many ginkgo trees, and every time I see one, I am reminded of the memories I hold at Lunata and how Popo would tell me to pick up the nuts rather than squish them. Popo was also my creative inspiration. She taught me how to knit and used to make yarn booties for me when I was little. She also gifted them to almost everyone who was around long enough for her to make them a pair. I never learned how to knit well enough to make them, but I have fond memories of pretending that the booties were ice skates and would skate around on our wooden floors. Of course, they also kept my feet nice and warm in the winter. She was also very supportive of my musical endeavors and purchased my first violin. She also attended all my recitals, cheering me on no matter how bad I sounded. While she would often say she didn't like sweets, Popo had a sweet tooth. We would always get ice cream for dessert after going out to eat. I think she enjoyed those ice cream cones as much as I did. When I started baking cookies and desserts, she always tried them and would say I should open a bakery, to which I replied, I don't enjoy baking that much. Whenever we visited Lunata, she would always have some type of sweet treat in her freezer. She remembered what flavor of popsicles I liked, and when it was hot outside, never failed to offer me one. When I started to read more books, she was also always interested in what I was reading. She loved the Elsie Dinsmore book series and would tell me to read it. I think I read the first one and decided it wasn't for me. But as I started to read more adult fiction, she and I would read several of the same books. One that she really liked was The Lincoln Highway by Amor Towles. She told me how someday she wanted to do a road trip across the United States and drive the Lincoln Highway. Even at her age, Popo was great at navigating technology. She learned how to text and send photos and became quite good at it. If you've never been a recipient of them, I have text to prove it. When COVID happened and she was forced to stay home, I helped her to connect to church online, and she was great at navigating Zoom on her iPhone and iPad. She was even able to get on a Zoom exercise class. More recently, she discovered she could watch movies on her iPad and requested that I show her how to download them to avoid the ads. In recent years, I was in charge of ordering her medication, and when Kaiser made it easier to order on her phone app, she wanted to do it herself, and she was successfully able to. Some of my favorite recent memories come from the trips she took with our family. The most recent trip she took with us was to Portland, Oregon, back in May. I like visiting national parks, and on this trip, I plan to visit too. Popo was really happy to see the parks, and even happier to find out that her senior lifetime National Parks Pass granted us free entry. We also went to this pie shop, and at first, Popo looked around at the options and said she didn't want anything. We decided to order a few things to share, and when the order came, she ended up trying all the different pies and sweets. She liked it so much, we ended up ordering a few more slices. While she was working at the hardware store, I started to work there as well, and she taught me a lot about hardware and retail. One thing that I know she firmly believed was that the customer is not always right. She would tell me that it was our job to help the customers, and most of the time, they came in seeking a solution to a problem and needed help figuring out what they needed. I spent countless hours working alongside her, and in that time, I learned and grew from her knowledge about hardware and life in general. When I moved across the country this past August, the one thing I missed most was being able to have in-person conversations with Popo. Like most older people, Popo struggled to hear me over the phone. Before moving to New York City, I lived at home, and I would see Popo every week on Sunday. She would come over to our house for church, and usually I would make brunch. We would have conversations over brunch that consisted of weekly news updates or upcoming plans. Moving further away made me realize how valuable those little moments were. After my last phone call with her, I remember thinking, there's so much I want to share with her over Christmas break. And while I won't get the chance to share with her now, I know that someday we will be reunited again. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sarah, and I am Derek's second child and Popo's third grandchild. Thank you all for being here today to honor and remember my grandmother, Popo. Speaking about her brings up a lot of emotions, but it's also deeply meaningful because so much of who I am today is rooted in the love and presence she so generously gave me throughout her life. Popo was someone who truly cared about staying connected. It was never a competition for who on the family phone plan would have used the most minutes, because she always won by a landslide. When I didn't live a car ride away, she would make it a point to regularly call me. This would typically happen in the early hours of the morning on the weekend. There were plenty of times I slept right through her call, and she never once failed to leave a voicemail. Her voicemails were so much more than a quick call me back. They generally encapsulated what ideas or topics she was pondering at the moment, a glimpse into her week, and always ended with a reminder that she was thinking of me. I'm so thankful to have small snippets of her life to hold on to and remember her by. Popo loved to share about the things she did day to day. One of her favorite games was mahjong, and she played it with her girlfriends whenever she had the chance. But she didn't want it to just be her thing. She taught all of her grandchildren how to play. And even though we had to sometimes be coerced into playing, we never wanted it to end once we started. It wasn't about the game itself, it was about the time we spent with her and the way she'd light up when playing with us. I truly appreciated that she would so passionately share what she loved with us. Popo also read a huge variety of magazines. She soaked up new information, and at any time she came across something interesting, whether an idea, a story, a recipe, or a fact, she would note it down so that she could share it with us. She noticed what each of us cared about and saved things she thought would spark our curiosity. She always remembered the little things that mattered to each of us and readily imparted her knowledge. Her constant commitment to sharing her life with me allowed me to never feel far from her, no matter the distance. As we've probably all experienced, Popo had a personality that could never be silenced. She spoke her mind always, and somehow, more often than not, she got away with it, walking the fine line between bluntness and saying something potentially offensive. But no matter her critiques, she constantly showed her love in quieter, more intentional ways. For me, it was a very specific package of fortune cookies from a bakery in San Francisco, one that wasn't necessarily easy for her to obtain. When she found out I liked them, she always had a bag with my name on it every time I visited. From Popo, I learned that love doesn't always have to be loud to be real. It can be quiet, precise, and full of intention. She never failed to make me laugh. I remember when she first learned how to text, and my dad would append LOL to his messages. Popo couldn't quite figure out what it meant, and after thinking on it, she asked me, "Why does your dad keep calling me little old lady?" Which, honestly, she wasn't wrong. But beyond her humor and bluntness, one of the things I admired most about Popo was her faith. She was unwavering in her dedication to knowing the Lord, and she held on to her faith with a strength and gentleness that I will always remember. One such example is how Popo would always sing very enthusiastically during worship in church. When I was very little, I learned that the reason why people sound different when they sing was due to whether or not they were singing in tune. Popo was the first person I asked if she sang in tune because she had such a big presence in worship with how exuberant she was. And Popo's response was, "Absolutely not." She then explained that she loved to sing because she wanted the Lord to know of her devotion to him. I can still picture her reading her Bible at the kitchen table, writing out her prayers on little scraps of paper, and faithfully attending church every week. Her faith wasn't just a part of her life, it defined how she lived her life. Popo, thank you for every knitted booty, every grapefruit peeled, every Saturday morning phone call, every bag of fortune cookies, every ice cream run, every lesson imparted, every hug, and every kiss. Thank you for your humor, your honesty, your routines, your faith, and your unwavering presence. Thank you for shaping me in ways you probably never even realized. And I pray that I will carry your love, your attentiveness, and your devotion with me for the rest of my life. I love you so much, Popo, and I know this is not goodbye, and I look forward to the day that I will hug you again in heaven. And I know that you would want to see each and every one of you there, too.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm Thomas Jung, and I had the privilege of calling Susan Grandma, or Popo, for 28 years. There are many things that could be said about Popo, and I'm sure we'll hear many more stories and memories of her here today, in addition to the memories we just heard. But I would best describe Popo's character is that she was just as kind and generous as she was tenacious, strong-willed, and unafraid to speak her mind. Many of my early memories of Popo came from spending time at Lunada. I fondly recall long summer days when my cousins would come up to visit from LA, and we would ride our bicycles around the tennis court and play on the rickety rope swing that my grandpa Mel, or Gung, built in the backyard. She was always there to give us treats like fresh peaches from her trees or cherry vanilla Hansen soda, and she would always remind us to be careful when we use that old swing. By the way, if anybody knows where to buy Hansen soda, let me know. I haven't seen it in 15 years or so at Costco. While I saw her every week at church, I really got to know Popo well when I started working with her at my parents' hardware store. As a teenager, I would go often on Saturdays. Popo didn't like operating machinery at the store, so I would cut keys and mix paint whenever I was there. She would yell, "Keys, paint, Thomas," and I would come trotting over to help. At the store, we also spent countless hours talking about all sorts of things, from current events to how my school was going, to her plans to harvest the ginkgo nuts from Lunada's backyard, to the theft of her persimmons by her long-running foes in the local raccoons. We would often get dinner together after work as well at our favorite Vietnamese place or at the pizza parlor next door where we'd continue our conversations. Popo worked hard her entire life and was always the kind of person that had to be doing something. At the store, she made endless lists of things that needed to be ordered and helped countless customers. The constant challenge of dealing with customers kept her mind sharp, and customers would always tell me that they couldn't believe how well Popo could locate the most obscure items, from a dog ear elbow to a center punch. And feel free to ask me if you'd like to know what any of those items are later. For many years, Popo could locate every item in the hardware store. She left her permanent mark there, and to this day, customers still come in and ask how she's doing. As we just heard from Emily, one of Popo's lifelong passions was tennis. She was dubbed the Wall in reference to her tenacious effort to return every shot, even if the quality of the return may have been suspect at times. She imparted her love of tennis onto my dad, who in turn taught me. Over the past few years, Popo would sit courtside and watch my dad and I play tennis, and would often heckle my dad and cheer for me. By the way, my dad has mastered the wall style of playing and still beats me every time we play, despite having over 30 years on me. I've since dubbed these ancient outdoor chairs where she sat as her heckling chairs. More recently, Popo really enjoyed watching professional tennis, regardless of whether it was a current or years-old match, and sometimes I wasn't sure if she could actually tell the difference. We'd often just put it on for her, and she would cheer as if it hadn't happened in the past decade or so. Popo's reputation, at least according to her recounting of being a wall at tennis, was quite in character with her tenacious and hardworking spirit. Whether it was working at a department store in high school, raising her 3 children, helping customers at the hardware store, or pulling weeds at Lunada, Popo was always in motion and giving whatever was in front of her her best effort. I doubt she knew too much about hardware before she worked at the store, but by the end of her time there, she was well-versed in home repair and the functions of a myriad of hardware tools and accessories. As we heard from Elizabeth, she also mastered technology quite adeptly given her age and was able to communicate with all of us. It's fair to say that up until her passing, Popa still expressed the same tenacious desire to do, learn, and go that she possessed throughout her entire life. When Jung died in 2019, I said a few words at his funeral, and it got me thinking about what I would say when Popa passed. This is not a speech that I thought I'd be making this soon. My grandmother was living her life to the fullest on the day that she left us. It was an exceptionally sunny and warm day on October 29th when I got the call from the sheriff while I was sitting at my desk. I was the first to find out about the accident, as my parents were out of the country at the time. That evening, I went to her house hoping to find her keys and to retrieve her car. As many of you know, this was not a straightforward task given her habit of collecting things, as Auntie Jana has informed us quite thoroughly. I didn't find her spare keys that night, and in fact, until Auntie Jana found them this past week, I had begun to doubt they existed at all. As I walked into her house, the laundry hung stiffly on the drying racks in the backyard patio. Her coffee mug sat atop her kitchen table that was covered in newspapers and magazines with notes on different articles that she wanted us to see. Her Bible sat open on the mahjong table in her living room, as it often did. Perhaps most memorable to me was the magnetic seat cushion on her sofa that she always sat on. About 20 years ago, some salesperson convinced her that sleeping and sitting on magnets was good for her in some form or another, and convinced her to buy a mattress and chair cover. She sat on that cover for as long as I can remember, knitting her little booties for us, as we've seen from Auntie Jana and Elizabeth mentioned, and more recently, watching tennis and TV. The mattress cover is also still on the bed, so she definitely got her money's worth, and I'm sure she was glad about that, despite never knowing if it actually helped her health. Outside, her broom and dustpan sat where they always did, with her green rubber gardening gloves hanging on them, making it look like a skinny scarecrow. As I walked around her house in the dark, I reflected on how proud she was of it, and how it reminded her of how far she'd come in life, and served as a clear reflection of God's blessings towards her and her family. During one of the final times I was with her at Lunada, I remember sitting down with her at the kitchen table, looking out onto the yard. We both reflected on how she had survived and overcome so many things to have been blessed with a large, loving family and Lunada itself. She also expressed great gratitude for having many wonderful friends. She was very proud of her home, and she reminisced about the many parties and gatherings she held there over the years. Through conversations like this and her actions throughout her life, she imparted to me the importance of being grateful for everything in life and not taking anything for granted. Popa overcame obstacles that I could not even imagine facing. When I remember her, I think of her fortitude, her kindness, her generosity, her faith, and her love of life itself. I feel overwhelmingly thankful for everything that she taught me throughout her life. I miss her very much, but I'm very grateful that she passed, having lived a long, rich life full of memories with her family and friends. Thank you all so much for joining us today to remember Popa and for your love and support. I know she would be touched to see you all here.